Legend, an optimistic teenager, had always dreamed of becoming a successful adventurer to provide his family with a life of luxury. To pursue this aspiration, he departed his humble village for the city, intending to enroll as an adventurer. However, challenges awaited him in a world where the goddess had brought forth 9 distinct races. Among these, humanity was deemed the least significant, perpetually subjected to prejudice and discrimination. A reality Light soon encountered firsthand. Immediately upon entering the urban area, a basement adventurer brusquely ordered him to clear the path, leaving Light with no option but to offer an apology. Despite not actually obstructing Anion, he complied. Upon arriving at the guild, he signed up as an adventurer, and the receptionist informed him that novice like himself were initially assigned the errand. She then inquired if he possessed any special ability that might influence his evaluation, to which Light enthusiastically confirmed. He revealed his ability, Unlimited Gacha, which allowed him to conjure itami. Realizing mere words wouldn't suffice, Light opted to provide a live demonstration. He materialized his gacha apparatus and promptly activated it. The device produced a fork, and as Light let go of it, a fork appeared on the table. To his dismay, the fork was severely warped, causing Light to panic. He assured the receptionist that his creation eventually turned out much better. He swiftly employed his skills several more times, but the outcome remained consistent. A rotten apple and a piece of moldy bread. This left the receptionist utterly convinced. Perhaps this incompetent individual merited nothing higher than an Efrano. Light accepted the designation without complaint, then inquired about any immediate task he could undertake. The receptionist directed him to the bulletin board displaying simple assignment. However, Light's visible discomfort upon saying it made her realize he was illiterate. Besides being inept, his illiteracy was not surprising, given humanity is generally low literacy rate. Should it have felt for forwarding and traded such and more calculating through. This job, however, offered significantly lower pay than others. Light agreed, and after a day of strenuous labor, he earned just enough to secure a room for the night. While he still depended on his gacha ability for sustenance, he remained optimistic about his future. Yet, a group of basemen had different intentions, deliberately obstructing his path. They positioned themselves to ensure he would collide with them. Their leader instantly began berating Light for the collision, and for soiling his attire, then proceeded to snatch his purse. Light, in a state of panic, pleaded for his money back, explaining he the homeless without it. The wolfman, however, simply struck him, asserting that Light needed to cover the cost of his soiled garments. The beastman abandoned Light, sprawled in a moody puddle. Every passerby advised him to find rest in the squalid slums, alongside his fellow humans. Feeling utterly despondent, Light was suddenly offered a helping hand. He instinctively grasped the outstretched hand of the beautiful elf before him. A moment later, he realized his own hand was caked in mud. Light retreated, profusely apologizing to the elf for soiling her. She, however, dismissed his concerns, assuring him she meant no harm. Yet, years of ingrained racism and prejudice made it difficult for him to trust her word. To demonstrate her sincerity, the elf woman unexpectedly knelt and embraced him, leaving Light utterly dumbfounded, even as onlookers. On the street ridiculed her for demanding herself for a human. She then assisted Light in getting back on his feet behind the elf. Stood a diverse group of individuals from various races. They introduced themselves as the adventuring party Concord of Tribes, explaining that their group that was specifically formed with one representative from each species created by the goddess, and they were currently lacking a human member. Garu, the Besma, introduced himself first, followed by the elf woman Sasha. Sasha then informed Light about the other members, Drago the Dragonoti, Diablo the Demon, Uboro the One, Sion the Dark Elf, Nano the Dwarf, and Santor the Centaur. Garu stated he had been searching for a human to finalize their party. Sion then elaborated, explaining their party's purpose was to eradicate racism and foster a world of universal equality. Light found this proposition almost too ideal to be true, but he couldn't decline such an appealing opportunity. He enthusiastically joined the Concord of Three Best, and so on. Their adventures began. Lake, however, proved to be the most vulnerable member of the team, frequently requiring rescue from monsters by Drago and Sasha. This cautioned him to be more vigilant, as a single blow from a creature could be fatal. Light apologized for his lack of caution, while Sasha meticulously checked him for wounds, instructing him to always remain behind the archer. The rest of the group started playfully mocking Sasha, suggesting she was overly fond of and concerned for Lake. She blushed deeply as she clarified that she merely regarded him as a fellow party member. Lake felt inadequate, believing his only contribution was carrying their guy. Yet Drago reassured him, praising his delicious tea-making skill and dreaming that sufficient. Greatly encouraged by this, Light joyfully trailed the team further into the dungeon. Before long, they arrived at an expansive open area. This patch had only a single entrance and exit. The party members exchanged glances, concluding it was the ideal location for their undisclosed scheme. Unknowing of their intentions, Light started preparing tent for the group when Drago approached him, informing him that he was being dismissed from the party. Light was too stunned to comprehend the statement, asking what he had possibly done to warrant expulsion. The biased man, Garu, then explained he was being fired for being unproductive. Everyone proceeded to call Light useless and foolish, with even Sasha fading disgust towards him. The other members of the party began hurling insults at Light and, by extension, the anti-human race. Light suspected it was a prank, but he quickly disabused him of that notion, stating, "No one had the leisure to play tricks on someone as worthless as him." He then questioned why they had treated him so keenly up until that point. They responded that it had all been an act. Drago revealed that their superiors had observed his unlimited gacha given, believing he might be a maestro, which led him to instruct the Concord of Three Best to closely monitor him. However, once he concluded that Light's ability was insignificant and he was not a maestro, he issued the order to eliminate him. Sasha expressed the greatest relief, stating she was glad he no longer had to tolerate Light's presence, as if he had indeed been a maestro. She would have been forced to marry him, a prospect that utterly repulsed him. Light, still baffled by the term maestro, was then interrupted. That as Drago declared he had explained Nogla and needed to dispatch him before other adventurers arriving. Garu instantly mimicked Wolverine, extending his metallic claws and using them to slash Light's face. Only at this moment did Light fully grasp the gravity of his perilous situation. Realizing there was no escape, he fled as swiftly as possible in sheer desperation. The prejudiced attackers were relocated, vowing not to let him escape. Sasha then shot an arrow through his leg, as Light collapsed to the ground, screaming in agony. The bigoted elves remarked that the sound of human scream was like sweet music to them. Garu intended to inflict further pain to elicit more screams, beginning to assault him. However, Drago intervened, ordering him to stop, as they needed to stake the scene to appear as if the human had pressure. That from a monster ambushing, Garu complete, preparing to deliver the final blow, but Light, desperately clinging to life, began to crawl forward. Abruptly, the ground beneath him began to emit a soft glow. Light realized he was positioned within a teleportation circle, a fact Drago also observed, and commands Garu to swiftly eliminate him, but before he can close aim, the teleportation circle activates, whisking Light away. However, Light's predicament hardly improves, despite escaping the treacherous merchant, The teleportation device deposits him in an arbitrary section of the dungeon. Aware that a monster as discovery would mean his demise, he reflects on his family, pondering what he did to merit such betrayal, and reminisces about the pleasant treatment he once received. Before they decided to stab him in the body, he now comprehends that their amiable conduct was merely a charade designed to earn his absolute trust. Ultimately, they revealed their true intention. Then again, he harnesses his fury, transforming it into a powerful wind to survive, and races to his feet, swearing vengeance upon Tassa's scoundrels, vowing to dismantle them with his own hand. However, before he can utter more expletives, Light perceives a deep growl emanating from his rear. Upon turning, he discovers a level 1,000 creature staring intensely at him. He panics at the second, as the monster appears to be something repeat directly from a fantastical story. Light comprehends he has been transported to the dungeon as the past life, concluding that he would have had a greater likelihood of surviving his treacherous party members than confronting this beast. Pondering how he could possibly combat such a creature, his man drifts to his unique ability, the ultimate gacha, and he resolves to gamble on it. He starts frantically tapping the gacha button, and unexpectedly, his seemingly mundane gift undergoes a metamorphosis into something far exceeding his wildest fantasies. A colossal magical emblem materializes beneath Shin, and the gacha mechanism begins to surge with power. Light remains bewildered, but precisely as the monster pounces, the gacha spin concludes. A level 9,999 Might Servant materializes from the circle, totally annihilating the monster in a flash. The entire ordeal concludes before Light can even register it. Subsequently, the aura harvesting might approaches him, Signias, instantly mending his injuries, and explains that she found his wounded state unbearable. His pristine skin merit, prompting her to heal him without seeking prior consent. Light is astonished to find himself completely restored, whereupon the maid inquires about his identity. He presents himself as Light, and the maid expresses immense joy upon hearing his name. She then pledges an oath by the maid's code of honor, vowing to serve him until her dying breath. Light assures her it's acceptable but suggests she should reveal her own name first. The young woman then identifies herself as May, the ever-seeking maid, and informs Light that she originated from a super ultra rare card within his unlimited gacha. However, Light finds it difficult to accept that a level 9,999 might could emerge from what he considers his insignificant gift. Yeah, May requests authorization to employ her appraisal ability on his giver, intending to discern its intricate specifics. He promptly grants her consent, and utilizing her sharinga, May ascertains that his inherent capabilities are shrouded by a potent concealment, rendering them imperceptible to anyone beneath her own power level. She informs Light that his ultimate gacha possesses far greater utility than he currently perceives, as the charts it generates are heavily influenced by the mana concentration of his surroundings. Furthermore, it is revealed that an even higher rarity tier exists beyond May's super ultra rarity. May clarifies that the mana density on the surface world is exceedingly low. Conversely, within the dungeon as abyssal reaches, the atmosphere is saturated with mana, which enabled her summoning. She commends Light as courage for venturing into the dungeon as depths unescorted, to fully unlock the potential of her gift. Fui, however, confesses that he is a failure who could even approach the dungeon independently, and he begins to weep, while recounting how his party abandoned him within the dungeon. Yolang several Thomas after you passed away our blood or prejudice, merely to deceive him, and then he vows to accept retribution. Upon them, May abruptly embraces him, stating that she cannot fully grasp the extent of his ordeal. Nevertheless, she assures him she will fulfill his desires, adding that annihilating those who wronged him will pose no significant challenge for her. However, Lake informs Ye that she cannot undertake this task, and this is the due to his benevolence. Rather, he desires to exact revenge personally, but currently lacks the strength. He pledges to inflict suffering upon every one of them, prior to their demise. May Osmore kneels before him, asserting that if he wishes to cultivate sufficient power for vengeance, she will assist him in that endeavor. She expresses her faith in his inherent capabilities, unlike Chan only over his gratitude. Yet, he remains unsatisfied with merely one exceptionally powerful female companion in his retinue. Consequently, he resolves to further leverage the Dongyeon as mana-abundant surroundings, employing his unlimited gacha once more to summon additional elite mages. His aim is to establish a kingdom that will function as the foundation for his elaborate scheme of retribution. 3 years have elapsed since that pivotal day, and light no presides over hundreds of mages. Within a magnificent palace he constructed for himself, Mei consistently remains at his side, fulfilling the vow she made upon their first encounter. All the mates appear utterly captivated by him, as they enthusiastically cheer him on. Delighted by his attention, while Mei instructs them all to maintain proper decorum. He then exits the castle and proceeds towards the nearby marketplace, where he is widely recognized. One vendor beckons him to his stall for breakfast, while others inform him of a scarcity of snack items throughout the land. Lake pledges to address the issue promptly, while Mei advises him not to concern himself with such minor responsibilities, assuring him she will ensure the logistical challenge is resolved with utmost speed. Lake acknowledges that he must devise an entirely new framework for managing the supply chain, given that the local populace has expanded manifold over the past 3 years. He then inquires of Mei about the whereabouts of his remaining legendary summons, and Mei responds that Yuki, the Beastman, is occupied with creating detailed map of the regions adjacent to the Dongyeon, simultaneously patrolling the forest for any potential disturbances. Lake contemplates the various creatures inhabiting the woodland but understands the world present no challenge to a prodigious beastman of her caliber. Mei proceeded, asserting that Ellie the mage is diligently laboring to develop the unique magical abilities required for his overarching strategy. Light ponders whether Ellie possesses the capacity to manage this task, given the numerous intricacies inherent in the magical incantation he commissioned her to devise. Light then inquires about Nas, the vampire knight, who excels in close quarters combat but is somewhat lacking in other intellectual domains. My response that she ascended as the duty of patrolling the castle premises, reasoning that this would prevent her from nagging her less than active men and consequently getting into an predicament. Leg, however, doesn't object to her presence, as she tends to inject more excitement into the castle environment. Within the castle's vicinity, they soon make their way back to the fortress, where Light is eventually summoned by Jack, the final of his 4 legendary companions, who question if Light is prepared for a training session. Mei appears slightly irritated and instructs Jachu that he ought to refer to Life by his appropriate title, Master. However, Jacob, embodying the essence of a true Sigma, disregards her completely, dismissing her words as feminist nonsense. Like reassures Mei that it's acceptable, as he regards Jack as an elder sibling, and then informs Mei that he intends to proceed to his training session with Jack immediately. Within the confines of the training ground, both prepare for a sparring match, when, with an explosive surge of velocity, Lake charges at his summoned companion, delivering a direct punch to his chiseled abdomen, forcing him backward with unexpected might. Jack appears gratified by Lake's display of power, asserting that a typical adventurer would have perished from such a blow, but he can withstand it, being constructed like a fortress and capable of enduring an extraordinary volume of air. They reconvene at the center of the arena, their fists clashing before they disengage. Light then unleashes a rapid succession of attacks, which Jack skillfully evades. Manuel, Nas, With her vacant expression, continues her patrol through the hallways, where she is approached by other maids who begin to batter her up. The assertive sense of security stems from Nas's constant vigilance, ensuring no traces are hidden nearby. Nas's face lights up with joy, exactly as the maids had hoped, prompting them to initiate at risk by proposing to verify that like as private quarters are safe and undisturbed. Nas considers this an excellent suggestion and projects towards the sleeping area. However, just as she attempts to open the door, Mai steps away. Nas questions Mai's presence in Lake's chamber, noting his absence for training. Mai kicks instantly flushed as she claims to have been tidying the room during his absence. Nas then states she needs to inspect the room for any potential threats. Yet, before Mai could object, Nas steps inside, observing the disheveled bed with a vacant expression. She remarks that it appears as though someone had been on the bed, smelling the cushion and tossing about, then inquire if Mai deliberately arranged it that way. Mai, leveraging her limited intellect, boldly asserted that this is her unique method of making a bed. Nas finds herself quite taken by this explanation. She then asked if she could also learn this technique, but Mai declines, stating it as a proprietary secret she cannot disclose at this time. At that moment, Nas rejects the maid's request for her to deliver a message to Mai. She produces a piece of parchment and hands it over. Mai then understands that the other maids are staging a protest against him for exclusively claiming like a sleeping quarters and preventing them from ever tidying it. Mai reassures Nas not to concern herself, stating she will personally address the maids, and even offers Nas some loose coins to ensure her silence. Nas gleefully accepts the money and departs, heading straight to the marketplace where she begins to survey all the edible goods she could purchase with her new funds. Ultimately, she settles on indulging in some light pancakes accompanied by fresh meal. With her decision made, she cheerfully makes her way back to the castle. Upon arriving at the castle, she spots Yuki perched on a balcony. Nas inquires if Yuki has completed her task in the forest, and Yuki, exasperated by Nas's nonsense, reveals to her that the map may request that has already been finished, and she has returned to hand it over. Nas offers her congratulations before resuming her patrol responsibilities. Prior to entering the throne room, once within the opulent chamber, she begins to shriek at the top of her lungs as there is no one present to restrain her. Following this, she leaps onto the throne itself and starts tampering with it, inadvertently snapping off one of the wings from an angelic sculpture. 3 feet of Mai's reaction. She hastily retouches the page in a haphazard manner and bolts out of the throne room, sprinting directly back to the training grounds. Light and Jack persist in their sparring, until Jack proposes they control their day's activities and head to the bath. They soon make their way to the washroom, and unsettled in the enormous bathtub. Jack commends Light for his rapid acquisition of skills, asserting that he possesses sufficient strength to render most of the creatures inhabiting the dungeons merged as play. This implies that even on the surface, only a handful could truly challenging. Yet they cautions him that there remain individuals. No world says an opportunity to utterly annihilate him. Light's expression turns grave as he reflects on the treachery he endured 3 years prior, asserting he will not rest until he achieves his retribution. Meanwhile, in Mai's private quarter, she summons the quartet of troublesome maids. She demands to know what their issue is, reading their letter aloud back to them. Confronted by Mai herself, the 4 maids are struck dumb. Unable to articulate a response, she offered their apologies, insisting it was merely their method of demonstrating solidarity, knowing Mai is overburdened with war. Mai instructs them not to concern themselves with her duties but to concentrate on their own. She rejects their appeal to clean Light's room and, instead, imposes a penalty. This punishment involves ordering them to manually scrub the lengthy corridor leading to the throne room, The maids express astonishment, arguing the hallway is excessively long. However, Mai instructs Tim to persevere, explaining it will occupy their team while she accompanies Leigh on an assignment. Elsewhere, Nas is fixated on a shop window. She is captivated by a gauntlet she desires but lacks the funds to purchase. While there, she encounters Ellen, who inquires about the object of Nas' gaze. Nas gestures towards the gauntlet, then questions Ellie's early return, reminding her that she is bound to be overseeing the ongoing new construction projects. Ellie responds that the construction is progressing without issues, prompting her to take a brief, unauthorized pause. They quickly descend into an argument over who holds greater proximity and significance to light. Ellie informs Nas that she is directly integrated into the retribution scheme Lagan is deficient, a privilege Nas does not share. Ellie further asserts that she recently enjoyed a delightful evening sharing tea with Lagan, during which they reviewed their advancements, and stated that their subsequent encounter will involve her arranging a private dinner. Nas declares her own desire to share tea with the master before informing Ellie that she is skilled. The teen hand-to-hand combat, suggesting Ellie shake her own resistance is ever needed. Ellie smiles, assuring Nas she will undoubtedly take her upon that over eventually, and with that, Nas resumes her unthinking duties. Back at the castle, the four maids are engrossed in conspiring against Mai, asserting that Mai is no superior to the Irati, diminutive mustachioed man from German. They ponder whether to secretly inform Leigh about her actions but reconsider, as none of them wish to incur her fury. On Mai the Duchess, that Leigh's deep affection for Mai stems from her being his ideal someone, while the purple-haired maid points out that it took like an additional 2 months. You finally summon Yuki, implying that Mai and Leigh were secluded together in the dungeons for a full 60 days. This realization sparks intense jealousy among them. They begin reaching on the fruit and exhibiting strange behaviors fueled by envy, before resolving to engage in some voodoo rituals, gathering around a table and chanting the in hopes of eliminating Mai from the situation. Regrettably for them, Mai happens to overhear their entire scheme and enters their room, cornering them once more. The maids instantly begin to apologize, asserting they were merely a bit envious, and did they genuinely mean any of their pronouncements. Mai instructs them to chase their bizarre fantasies, explaining that during the period between her own summoning and Yuki's, Light was entirely occupied with mastering every aspect of magic and diligently practicing every martial art called Atempe. Consequently, he had no opportunity for other activities. This revelation somewhat assuages the maids, while my status here returned because she sensed she had been overly strict with them, but now understands that, evidently, she hadn't been. Therefore, she instructs them to also clean the throne room, given their apparent abundance of free time, before practicing voodoo. Entirely at Mai's discretion, the maids had no alternative but to comply with her directives, cleaning the entirety of the throne room as well. They resolved to remain silent on this occasion, to prevent additional complications. However, while meticulously dusting the throne, the green-haired maid inadvertently dislodges the fragment of the angel Aswin that Nas had previously broken. The piece clatters to the ground, and the maids are filled with dread, believing it to be their fault and fearing Mai's impending reaction. Upon entering the dungeon the following morning, Light discovers Nas, Elle, and Yuki are already present. He offers them a morning greeting. As Nas and Ali's usual squabble begins, a creature unexpectedly materializes from the darkness. Light instantly freezes, recognizing it as a hellhound. Despite his increased strength, the past trauma associated with such a creature continues to plague him, causing his blood to run cold at its sight. His companion, conversely, remain unfazed, instead becoming enraged that the hellhound has distressed Light. Nas immediately prepares to dismember it. Manuel, Ellie requests authorization to completely exterminate the Hellhound species from existence, and Yuki contemplated whether she could locate the hell itself and lure this creature into its deepest chasm. The sheer intensity of their presence alone causes the monster to whimper and retreat, recognizing its utter inferiority. Loige, nonetheless, surveys his companion, recovering his own composure before gently approaching the monster and patting it. He understands that even a light-hearted command won't result in his legendary summon sweeping out the entire species from the world. Vision turns to his group, stating clear need to project to the surface. As their retribution plan is set to commence today, meanwhile, on the surface, the best folk pay homage to the furry individual who was part of the group that betrayed Lai, and leaving him for dead. He appears to have ascended to local celebrity status, with people practically pleading for him to engage with their female relatives. Hastridus confidently besides his associates, exuding authority. When he spots a human child rummaging, Frog refused for sustenance. However, this furry individual harbors intense racial prejudice, and without any apparent provocation, he opts to cast the shield acid, ordering him to flee and never reappear in the vicinity if he follows his existence. The other best folk foolishly applaud him, but their cheers fade as he enters the tavern. He crosses the premises and instructs his companions to order lavishly, as he boasts of accumulating substantial wealth that he must spend before tax authorities intervene. While humans suffer from hunger outside, these furries are served enormous platters laden with mad skewers. The universal law acts as a card for all baseball. Five species, one disease corn, and is stand from the zone to combat estimate Duiden. Whom everyone aspires to follow. He audaciously informs them that achieving his status is no simple feat, as he has perfected the craft of persuasion. And given that best folk are inherently predisposed to follow, he merely needs to leverage this trait effectively to live a life of luxury. He asserts that the paramount aspect involves discerning which endeavors are lucrative and which demand considerable exertion for minimal financial gain or influence. One of the last intelligent furries inquiries if the assignment he undertook 3 years prior with the Concord of 12 party profitable. Another furry reprimands him for posing such a question, and the wolf beast then informs him that, regrettably, the Federation that commissioned their services burns him to an oath of secrecy, preventing them from disclosing any details regarding that matter. He recollects it as the most effortless and lucrative assignment they had ever undertaken, as it merely involved eliminating one insignificant, inconsequential humanity, and now he enjoys wealth and renown. However, it does trouble him that he never ascertained the portal as destination, but he dismisses any possibility, however slight, that light could have survived. He ponders the true nature of this maestro that the Federation was so obsessively determined to locate. Yet, as Sugden shivered down his spine suggested that delving further into the matter could be perilous. His contemplation is interrupted by the arrival of a beautiful young woman, who is revealed to be Mai. When she interjects, inquiring if she may speak, and asks if he is Garo, the leader of the Beast Folk, he takes a slow sip from his glass. Prior to nodding his assent, May fabricates a story, claiming to have been the personal attendant of Master Lega, who hailed from a lineage of noble ancestry. Garo is astonished to learn that life belonged to the aristocracy, and he must say whether it may have been more advantageous for him had he kept like Olive. May persists in her deception, be asserting that she has been seeking Lega for the past 3 years, and all available intelligence has guided her to this nation, where he was last observed with a new girl. Garo confirms his involvement in that very party and that Light was indeed among them, causing my eyes to brim with tears as she continues her fabrication. Thought she had heard Light met his end in the dungeon and was never seen thereafter. Garo as associates corroborate, affirming that Light indeed suffered an unfortunate demise. However, May requested the world escort him to that specific location, stating it would offer her some comfort to visit the place where Light was last alive. Garo curtly demands to know what benefit he would receive, and to his astonishment, May placed a pouch containing 3 solid gold bars before him. His surrounding associates are left stunned and silent. But Garo maintains his composure, pondering if this is a deceptive ploy or if the young woman genuinely seeks an escort into the Domians. He ultimately agrees, however, convinced that a single human Garo possesses no threat, unable to even lay a hand on him, much less endanger him. Garo eventually escorts her to the Domians, accompanied by all his associates, and after several hours of travel, he inquires about May's well-being. May appears fatigued but manages a smile, asserting her ability to continue walking. Garo reflects on how such lucrative opportunities consistently present themselves to him. Planning to seize all her gold and then assault her atop Light's supposed resting place, finally, they entered the cavalry where Light was abandoned and presumed deceased. And Garo informs May that this is the set of Light's unfortunate demise. He fabricates a story, claiming a horde of monsters ambushed them, leaving Light no opportunity to flee to safety, and was torn to shreds, subsequently ensnared in a teleportation trap, never to be seen again. May collapses to her knees, weeping. Meanwhile, Garo musses on the inferiority of humans, who are seemingly incapable of perceiving imminent danger. His associates begin positioning themselves, obstructing the sole exit, while he heartlessly persists in fabricating tales of his failed attempts to rescue Ledge. Just as he was preparing to launch his assault, May tone shifts dramatically as she declares that only the most depraved beings on earth could deceive an innocent soul like Lake, luring him into a squalid dungeon, and subsequently betray him. She surveys her surroundings, realizing that had she entered like a service owner, who would never have endured being kicked, shot in the leg with an arrow, and brutally beaten within an inch of his life. Garo instantly senses the danger and recoils, pondering how on earth this woman possesses such detailed knowledge. His associates appear bewildered, oblivious to the full scope of the situation. But Garo understands that the sole individuals privy to the events that transpired are the 12 members of his party and a select few of the nation's elite. He demands to ascertain her employer, questioning if she is an espionage agent dispatched by a hostile tribe. She responds with a dismissive scoff, asserting that her allegiance lies solely with Laker. She declares that he will now confront her fury. The sheer power emanating from her is sufficient to instill fear in him. This reaction is a surprise even to himself. He mentally reiterates that she is merely an inferior human, useful only for exploitation and subsequent disposal. Yet, her mere gazes and shivers down his spine. He comprehends that this is no jest, as his primal instincts are screaming that his demise is imminent. Light's voice emerges from the shadows, instructing May to stand down, as he intends to confront Garo personally. Garo initially dismisses the voice, but Light then steps into view, addressing Garo with a familiarity usually reserved for old friends, declaring his intention to settle a past debt. For actions taken 3 years prior, Garo's self-assurance quickly returns, and he laughs, remarking that he never expected to encounter Light once more. He then ridicules Light, asserting that a mere level 15 human is utterly powerless against a formidable level 150 raid boss such as himself, chuckling as he speaks. Garo expresses bewilderment at Light's survival but declares his intent to personally unlike as live and present his corpse as evidence. Later, which Asiga inquires if Garo has no interest in May's identity or her capability. Garo concedes he is unaware of his little May's power but remains convinced that frail humans can never measure up to beast folk like his skin. He brags that every one of his henchmen exceeds level 130 and will effortlessly overwhelm them. With this, he issues the order to assault, prompting two of his subordinates to charge forward, who instantly sprint towards Lake, intending to kill him. However, in a flash, Mai materializes before them, and their heads simultaneously drop to the floor. As their inanimate bodies collapse, she issues a stern warning, an individual attempting to menace Lion will forfeit their head. Yet, Light instructs her to withdraw and release all escape routes. As he desires to partake in the action himself, Garo's followers appear to be losing their nerve. Should be the written display, but Garo endeavors to steady their resolve. He asserts that it was merely a deceptive maneuver and nothing more. Light then questions if Garo genuinely maintains his belief in human inferiority, and if he has ever entertained the possibility that perhaps the human species may actually be the most powerful of all. Garo's cover, ostentatiously displaying his level, but Light counters that a level is merely a numerical value, bearing no true correlation to one's actual power. How formidable an individual truly is. Garo, however, has reached his limit, and they, along with all his henchmen, charges forward to attack. To his astonishment, Light remains utterly unmoving, like still water. Then, Light abruptly erupted into a furious counter-assault, parrying and striking every single foe, sending them sprawling. Slightly wounded, Light advances toward Garo, inquiring if he still perceives humans as the weaker species. Garo, unable to tolerate such indignity, endures his pain, and leaps up once more, asserting that no human could ever possibly contend with him. Thereupon, he extracts a magic crystal from his pocket, shatters it on the ground, and conjures his familiar, a formidable level 500 wolf monster. Light questions if that is the extent of Garo's power, but Garo misinterprets Light as the manner as such and fair, instructing him to plead for his life. However, Light merely remains stationary, challenging Garo to strike, falling not to budge an inch from his spot. Garo, incensed, commands his creature to unleash a blast so potent it could obliterate an entire city. Yet, as the dust dissipates, his jaw drops in disbelief. He observes Light standing perfectly still, precisely as promised, completely unscathed. Light then derides Garo for bestowing such an extravagant title upon his attack. Web its sole effect was to stir up dust pointlessly. Garo is rendered speechless, while his henchmen begin to panic. Light announces that it is now his turn to attack. He proceeds to draw a card, reminiscent of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel, unleashing the level 9,000 ultra rare card of the Primal Wolf God, which materializes behind him, shimmering and ethereal, leaving Garo as bestie utterly dumbfounded. Light then instructs the Wolf God to eliminate Garo as familiar, but instead of unleashing a powerful energy blast, the Wolf God merely exhales gently. The inherent power within this breath instantly crystallizes Garo's wall, shattering it into fragments directly before him, as he watches on, powerless. Garo finally breaks the way, utterly incredulous that his level 500 wolf monster was annihilated in a mere second. However, Light asserted that he should have dispatched the monster himself if he had chosen to, and to substantiate this claim, he unveils his actual level, which is revealed to be the maximum possible, 90,999. Garo stuttered and trembles, protesting that this is impossible, as humans are known to cap at level 100. He further argues that if Light were indeed the same human from years past, he would have aged considerably by now. Light then discusses that he employs an age altering ring to halt his physical maturation, as he wishes to preserve his memory of himself and the day he was betrayed by the most despicable individuals. Garo comprehended that his fate is sealed, possessing absolutely no hope of ever overcoming the formidable entity Light has transformed into. He understands that he is as good as dead. Consequently, he acts as a craven individual war, casting acid his weapon, and apologizing for his past actions, asserting Tate was compelled to commit them. Due to pressure from the Federation, he insists that even on this day, he harbored the desire to inflict harm, and had intended to reveal the truth. But that his subordinates devised him independently and coerced him into participating. His underlings are aghast, unable to reconcile Jesus with the person they know. Lowell was flaunting his ability and power just this morning. He lowers his head, imploring forgiveness, and even offers to become like as personal servant if desired. Leg, however, remains unmoved, merely inquiring about the identity of Maestro and the government as intense determination to locate this individual. Garo candidly responded that he has no knowledge of the Maestro's identity, only that the government informed him it was likely a human. Like then questioned why they chose to assassinate him. After concluding he was the Maestro, Garo promptly bowed, insisting he genuinely has no idea and was simply following orders. Like then directs his gaze towards the remaining henchmen, asking if they possess any intelligence that could spark their life. The subordinates all begin to assert that they indeed have the information lying. The Cyril, however, my employees her unique vision to discern their falsehood and proceeds to dismember them, scattering blood across the area. She proclaimed that a young war that is truly in life this person will praise be her handle. Deck then addresses Garo once more, inquiring about his prospects of victory. Should he decide to wage war on the surface world? Garo candidly responds that light is exceptionally powerful, capable of conquering entire nations single-handedly. However, construction scholastic man deploy all the armaments they are amassing, light might encounter significant difficulty, given he is but one man accompanied by a single might, like Zen Smiley, declaring his intention to reveal something to Garo. He then employs teleportation magic to transport him directly to his personal throne room. Garo is utterly stunned, to the brink of mental collapse as he beholds the vast army Light has assembled, where even the most minor combatant is level 15, and 4 mates are maxed at level 90,999, alongside the innumerable other forces, ranging from level 6,000 to 9,000. Garo is rendered speechless, a tear tracing up down his face as he comprehends that light possesses the power to eradicate the entire planet in an instant, effectively making him a deity. He ponders the implication on war is declared. Several months then elapse. Light eventually emerges from the depths of the dungeon and, accompanied by his companions, sets out to visit his former village. He hopes to demonstrate to his family that they has indeed become powerful enough to ensure their perpetual safety. However, upon finally arriving at his village, his eyes, previously alight with joy and yearning for home, are now consumed by shouts and dread as he surfaces the utter devastation that has befallen his entire village. He rushes towards it, disbelieving what he says, and collapses to the ground, utterly despairing. May and his companions calmed him, vowing retribution against those who attacked his village. His sole comfort, or glimmer of hope, stemmed from the absence of his family as remained among the other disguised villagers during their searching. This led him to cling to the belief that his family had evaded the massacre and were perhaps concealed elsewhere in the land. Several weeks elapsed since the event. Like chose to revisit the devastated village, intending to calmly evaluate the situation. As his previous visit was clouded by emotional distress, he feared the may have overlooked crucial information that could shed light on his family's fate. This time, he was joined by Gold, an armored knight, and named a gray-haired assassin. The village's appearance radiated his terror, yet he maintained his composure. With his allies' assistance, he dug numerous graves for the fallen villagers as he placed flowers. He recognized that this act was unmistakably the work of an adventuring party from a different race. While like ponderer, Gold began to grumble about the necessity of the parting soon, arguing that staying would force him to sleep outdoors. Nem grew angry, asserting that Light was grieving and deserved ample time. Gould retorted to Nam that he would brave the Hejastisi plagues and the deepest abysses for Light, but he also understood the importance of securing a comfortable and self-resting place for Light in his current sorrowful state. Nam called the disputes, and the brief exchange appeared to lift Light's spirits. He smiled, rosy, and told him to relax, assuring them he was fine. We suggested they would find logging soul, but first, they should collect more intelligence. Although their combined strength could challenge the world, Light believed they should proceed with prudence, and advised against rushing into an open conflict. Gould concurred, stating that one must understand their adversary as thoroughly as they understand themselves, adding that this was essential for a clean victory. Light agreed, suggesting they first assess the capabilities of all the various nations. Furthermore, he suspected the attack on his village could be linked to his potential as a maestro. The realization that the clandestine society, which had previously condemned him to death, would go as far as to eradicate his entire village, filled him with fury. As he vowed to incinerate the world to its foundations to purge all evil. Nam was stunned by Light's emanating aura, but Gould quickly assuaged him, reminding him to control his rage while in the city, as they weren't ready for a massacre. This brought Light back to his senses, and he composed himself, then produced orator una pealin. Angular muscle, preparing to enter the city. He began fleeing towards Dagas. En route, Nim inquired about their strategy for the city. Light explained they needed to keep a low profile initially, to avoid suspicion from the Concord of Duabla. He also planned to register with the Adventurers Guild, aiming to elevate their party as rank as much as possible once enrolled, as a higher rank would grant them access to more intelligence from individuals seeking their assistance, or thus desiring their favor and protection. Gould praised the plan but questioned if they should project on foot from that point. Otherwise, they would instantly draw unwanted attention. Light agreed, and they descended to the ground, continuing their journey on foot. While traversing the forest, however, they heard shouts ahead and discovered a group of dwarfs had encircled Ahmad and his daughter, poised to rob them. The dwarf spotted Gould as claiming armor and ordered him into the open. Light then instructed his companions to handle the small aggressors. Nam swiftly subdued the dwarfs, leaving them stunned and bound together in the forest. In gratitude, the rescued man offered him a raid to Dagas. The young Giram was visibly impressed, having never heard of a human defeating a dwarf in battle, a sentiment the man echoed. Noting the rarity of such powerful humans, he asked Light if they were a renowned adventuring group, but Light truthfully responded that they weren't even registered yet, which surprised the man. Nevertheless, he assured Light that he had arrived at an ideal location to form a new party, as Dagas was situated on the border of the Dwarf Kingdom, adjacent to both human and elven territory. This unique position led to a diverse array of dungeons and adventurers, fostering many conflicts, but also significant tragedy. The city was popular among humans, but given the frequent discrimination they faced elsewhere, he personally operated an inn, where all races were treated with equal dignity. Light and his group disembarked from the chart at the town's entrance, thanking the man, who introduced himself as colonel, and invited him to his establishment should they need lodging for the night. Inside the city, they were immediately struck by the vibrant activity and splendor, with shops at every corner selling weapons and armor, while glowing forges illuminated the streets, where dwarfs crafted swords and shields. After absorbing the city's magnificence, they proceeded to the Adventurers Guild. They entered a spacious hall bustling with individuals gathered around quest border. Light observed a considerable number of human adventurers present, yet racism persisted, as humans often defer to honor riches. For the moment, Light chose to disregard this, and went directly to the registration desk, where they were assigned rank F. Nem became furious, telling the desk attendant to improve her demeanor, warning that otherwise, someone else might correct it for her. She insisted the receptionist refused the run, arguing Lydia's immense strength merited at least an S rank. The receptionist, however, remained indifferent, instructing Nem to step back with her smelly human self and accept the assigned rank. Before Nem could respond, Light intervened, apologizing to the receptionist, accepting the rank gracefully, and leading them out. Outside, Nem began to apologize to Light, feeling she had ruined things, but Light calmed her, then guided his party to Colonel as in. Colonel was pleased to see him again, and inquired how he could assist them. Light explained they had unusual request to let the inn as entire overflow for a month, during which no one else, besides his party, would be permitted access. Not even the inn staff preemptively apologized for an inconvenience this might cause, but stressed its importance, then produced a pouch brimming with gold coins as payment. Colonel, however, declined, asserting they should never accept money from someone who had saved his life. Lloyd, nonetheless, insisted, and Colonel eventually relented and accepted the payment. On the upper floor, Light deployed various magical barriers to ensure their privacy from curious gazette, and then removed his mask and coat. Relaxing, Nem reiterated that he should have remained by him, allowing her own goal to handle things. Nem insists on collecting all necessary intelligence for Leg, emphasizing that despite his strength, excessive caution is never a bad thing. This greatly irritates Leg. Leg recesses from his seat, questioning if Nem intends to thwart his quest for vengeance and prevent him from holding accountable those responsible for his village's destruction. And family, the familiar, craving aura of death and devastation envelops him once more, causing Nem to tolerate and immediately fall to her knees in fear. She begs for his pardon, asserting Tansha had no intention of causing offense. Light eventually composes himself and offers an apology to Nem, recognizing that her sole desire is for his well-being. With that resolved, the following morning sees them preparing to finally enter the dungeon. They don their gear for the day and join Alangtico, which stretched towards the dungeon as main entrance. As they waited in the extensive queue, three cloaked individuals abruptly pushed ahead of a group of young human adventurers. Leia, observing the sheer audacity with which they bypassed the lane, instantly deduced that these newcomers were not of human descent. However, while all other human groups appeared intimidated, Light boldly interjected, instructing the hooded men to return to their proper place in the queue, like everyone else. One of the cloaked figures spun around, a mix of fury and disbelief on his face, astonished that a merry human had dared to address him directly. Light calmly informed him that if he hailed from a noble lineage, he likely wouldn't wish to cause a public disturbance. Yet, the hooded individual seemed to possess significant temper issues, as he prepared to unsheath his weapon. However, another member of his party intervened, halting him, and he promptly withdrew from the queue. Yet, as they retreated, the cloaked man issued a warning to Light, stating that their encounter was far from concluded. All the human onlookers erupted in cheers for Light, admitting they would never possess the courage to challenge other races. Meanwhile, the young adventurers positioned ahead of them inquired why Light's group hunted broke and provision, explaining that, in their estimation, this dungeon was vast and could require several days to traverse. Consequently, adventurers consistently carry supplies to establish camps overnight. Shortly thereafter, they stepped into the dungeon, discovering themselves within an entirely unfamiliar realm, teeming with its own distinct creatures and formidable monsters. As soon as Light ascertained that no one was observing them, they activated his concealment magic, followed by flight magic, enabling them to traverse the dungeons behind, completely undetected. Concurrently, Deep within the jungle, the cloaked individual said Hashwood, still sitting with Reggie over the perceived disrespect from that insignificant human. He unsheltered a massive sword from his back, proclaiming loudly that his name was Kaido, the youngest elf ever to be inducted into the elite White Knights. Blasting the blood of the master coursing through his veins in a fit of uncontrolled fury, he annihilated all the orcs, impaling their heads as the dark elf Namatio urged him to compose himself. Kaido, however, remained incensed due to his inability to advance his level, which appeared to be capped at 15. Yun informed him that typical elves usually reached a maximum level of 700, but Kaido found this explanation wholly unsatisfactory. He vowed to himself that he would exceed this level, regardless of the obstacles. Meanwhile, back on the third floor, Leigh and his companions had successfully cleared this section and resolved to control their exploration for the day, and gather all the magical gems as evidence of their successful completion of the level. With all items secured, he opted to make their way back to the surface. As they absorbed the dungeon as intricate beauty, they recognized that without their capacity for flying, transitioning between floors alone would have consumed an immense amount of time. However, owing to their unique abilities, they were capable of clearing numerous levels within a single day. While en route back, they observed the young adventurers engaged in combat with a group of goblins. Like chose to observe their progress, noting how they successfully eliminated all the goblins through effective teamwork. However, Light promptly descended and dispatched a Bushnaki that had been stealthily approaching the mage girl from behind. Light then cautioned the young adventurer against becoming overly fixated on the immediate enemy, and to consistently maintain awareness of their environment. The young individuals expressed their gratitude for his assistance. Suddenly, a pack of wolves emerged from matching the adventurers to ban and the territory. To their bewilderment, however, the wolves did not attack but merely scattered. All their queries were resolved when an enormous mantis then lumbered out of the forest, poised to obliterate anything in its path. Only Leitno stood as a barrier between the colossal creature and the lives of these fledgling adventurers. The young adventurers were utterly petrified. As they gazed, terror-stricken, at the mantis, they desperately tried to devise a strategy for escaping this predicament. Oliver, the leader of their group, then turned around and attempted to maintain a brave facade, but his trembling voice betrayed him as Heather falsely instructed Mayan, the pink-haired girl, to deploy her verbal spam against the mantis, in an attempt to divert its attention. Yet Van Fast lagged, imploring him for assistance, emphasizing that their only chance of surviving this monster lay in collective effort. He explained to Light that they must somehow collaborate to bring the monster down, which would hopefully afford them sufficient time to flood the area. Light regarded him with slight confusion, inquiring if they had no intention of hunting the creature. The young boy stared at Light in utter shock, exclaiming, "Of course, they didn't wish to hunt the beast, as it was currently hunting time." Light then questioned if it would be acceptable for him to slay the monster and claim its spoils. The boy, convinced Light had lost his sanity, declared his plan absurd and asserted that the monster was far too powerful. He insisted they needed to escape as quickly as possible, and notify the girl about this exceptionally strong monster, as the dungeon required immediate sailing. Legion, however, merely offered a reassuring smile and told the boy not to be concerned, and simply retrained Legion turned to Gold and Nym, both of whom appeared keen to engage. Nym remarked that this encounter should serve as an excellent warm-up, given that the mantis monster was likely at least level 500. They were on the verge of determining who would initiate the attack, but Gold, deciding to act unilaterally, charged towards the monster. The mantis retaliated, striking at him with its steady-like limbs. However, Gold deftly blocked the assault with his sword, parrying every single blow the mantis aimed at him. This appeared to enrage the creature, which then slammed its cases into the ground. As Gold leaped back to a safe distance, he asserted that the monster had absorbed the full force of his attacks, yet remained entirely unscathed, indicating the immense strength of its steady-like limbah. Nem playfully mocked him, suggesting Gold was feeble and merely fabricating excuses. Like then resolved to take his turn. He activated the Fire Arrow card, which conjured a magical circle, from which a massive blast of fire erupted and hurtled towards the mantis to their astonishment. The monster managed to repel the attack, sending it back towards Lake, and his companion, who swiftly leaped away to avoid the ensuing explosion. The young adventurers were utterly astounded by the sheer power of the spells being unleashed before their very eyes, having never previously witnessed a player exceeding level 100. The leader boy instantly turned to Maya, instructing her to cast an explosion spell to assist them. However, the girl whirled around to face the boy, yelling that they were utterly outclassed in this situation. She asserted that Light had just employed an extremely advanced combat class magic, and, moreover, without any visible spell casting or verbal incantations, which she deemed utterly unbelievable, having never witnessed such a feat before. The boy admitted they did not fully grasp the profound implication of her statement, but maintained that the audit to assist like his party. Gold overheard this exchange and chuckled. He instructed the young adventurer to remain at a safe distance and observe the spectacle, emphasizing that they needed to learn first. Otherwise, he would be needlessly endangering their life. He pledged to instruct them on how to fight like Agnes, demonstrating how to defend effectively with a shield, while simultaneously attacking with a sword, all while addressing the children. With his back turned to the mantis, the creature attempts to exploit the vulnerability, launching an assault. The children watch, paralyzed with fear. They are unable to utter a single word of warning. But Gold requires no assistance, expertly using his shield to parry the attack with such precision. The impact utterly devastates the mantis as flan. The creature shrieks in agony as blood gushes from its wound, while Gold calmly informs the children that a precisely executed counter-attack with a shield can often be more potent than a sword stroke. With this, he swiftly pivots, catching the mantis completely by surprise. He severs one of its legs with a clean tube. The children are awestruck by this demonstration of power, as Light then opts to showcase his own abilities, deploying his Fire Arrow technique once more. The mantis bats it as it did previously, but to its astonishment, Light can manipulate the projectile as trajectory, using it to straight the creature from an unexpected angle. Striking its back, he relentlessly unleashes fire blasts, assailing the mantis from every direction simultaneously, utterly disorienting it and forcing it to retreat. Maya is astonished by his feat, having never witnessed Aion command the trajectory of their attacks with such freedom. Lake precisely strikes the mantis with his fire arrows, causing one of its flanks to explode, recognizing its disadvantage. Against the skilled adventurers, the mantis attempts to escape to safety on its remaining limbs. Later, however, perceived that the creature possesses more cunning than he initially assumed. Yet, it's a moot point, as there is no path for escape. Like Jan unveils his firewall card. Instantly, a colossal barrier of furious flames erupted, severing the mantis as escape protected and calling it to reverse the Gillard as the small ideas agent. She comprehends that Light just deployed a tactical class magic without any chance or rituals, an act considered impossible. Light and his companions advance towards the mantis, prepared to deliver the final blow. He are thwarted as the monster reveals a last stratagem. It unfurls its wing and ascends into the air. Light understands that it might indeed evade them. Consequently, he entrusts the remainder to an. She instantly leaps skyward, unshooting her daggers, and dispatches the creature with a singular, spectacular attack, utterly annihilating the beast. She later content with her performance, but Gold quickly brings her back to earth. He points out that she obliterated all the valuable components she could have sold, simply for the sake of a flashy move. Nam grasps the implications of her actions. She begins to apologize to Leg, while the young adventurers remain frozen, too astonished to utter a word, as they try to comprehend the events they just witnessed. Three individuals had vanquished a level 500 mantis monster, a feat beyond their belief. They begin to ponder the true identities of these strangers, like reassures them not to fret, as they will encounter and defeat more creatures during their journey. Meanwhile, one of the young adventurers discovers the magic gem, located at the heart of the monster. This crucial loot item instantly brightens them as spiritus, as it signifies their potential for a rank up. The leader of the junior adventurer approaches Light. He inquires if they are a known adventuring group and whether they hold a B, A, or S rank. Lake Chalmers responds that they are a newly formed party, currently holding an F rank. This revelation leaves the young adventurers utterly dumbfounded. Even their own group possesses a higher ranking than F. Maya promptly conjures a sphere of water, offering it to Light and his companions for them to refresh themselves. Light expresses gratitude for their kindness, but the junior adventurers confess that without Light and his team, they would likely have perished that day. At the mercy of the mantis monster, the leader of the adventurer then extends an invitation for Light and his group to spend the night at their camp. Dotas dos approaches, and traversing the Dumion after dark is perilous affair for the most formidable adventurers. Furthermore, Maya is particularly keen to converse with Hai regarding all the magic she witnessed earlier. Light opts to accept the invitation and joins them at their campsite, where they begin their evening meal. Maya begins to bombard Light with her suspicions. While your Amazon, siapa serta kabarnya Hassel, belum delivered is siasat kasih menanamkan proloris. Combat class magic, merciless execution without incantation. The other members of the party still fail to grasp the significance of the magic light demonstrated. This infuriates Mayhem, who bursts out at them, clarifying that there are three distinct advanced categories of magic. First, combat class spells, like fire arrows, designed for single target assaults. Second, tactical class magic, such as the firewall light deployed previously, which impacts a vast area simultaneously. And finally, strategic class magic, possessing global ramifications, capable of summoning meteors, tsunamis, and earthquakes. However, this requires the combined efforts of multiple highly skilled mages to season asserted that advanced class magic is typically commonplace among races such as elves, dragons, and beastfolk. Humans, conversely, generally lack sufficient mana to utilize them effectively, making like Esmer's ability to employ such magic a remarkable feat in itself. Moreover, his execution of these advanced spells without an incantation is nothing short of legendary. Both Gold and Nem concur with Maya, acknowledging her apparent expertise. The young group leader reveals that Maya is his sister and possesses considerable magical talent, which led to her acceptance into the Duchy, a school of magic. This institution as name resonates with Legate, who inquires if it is the one situated in the region known as the Principality of None, a place purported to treat all races equally. The boy affirms this with a nod, but his gaze is dense as he discloses that their parents succumbed during the recent epidemic. Consequently, Maya was never able to attend. This prompted him to form their adventuring party with his childhood friend, aiming to accumulate sufficient funds to send Maya to the Duchy School of Magic. This narrative evokes memories of Light's own younger sister, and reassures the junior adventurers, confident they will soon realize their ambition. With that, they conclude their evening. The following morning, they emerge with an abundance of high-level magic gem crystals, much to the receptionist's astonishment. As other adventuring groups ponder their identity, the receptionist gladly accepts their crystal and provides them with payment. After which they depart from the goal. They project through the marketplace, where virtually every individual appears to recognize them as detail of an F-ranked party. Vanquishing a level 500 mantis monster has evidently spread rapidly. Light is placed by the attention they are attracting. However, they are abruptly accosted by two men who inquire if they are indeed the owners responsible for defeating the level 500 monster. Nem instantly brandishes her dagger, demanding to know their intention. The man immediately recoiled, asserting their friendly disposition and introducing themselves as Sufam and Gil. Gil voices his skepticism regarding the story, which promptly results in Nam holding her dagger to his throat, as she insists on knowing. Xavier is accusing Light of dishonesty, Sufel urges her to calm down, explaining that they are all supportive, as Light demonstrated that humans should not be underestimated. Just then, Sufel and Gil are summoned by their own party, so they wish Light and his group good fortune before departing. Light and his companions soon joined the chorus to re-enter the Domain, where they began to overhear other rats ridiculing the assertions that a human group had vanquished a mantis creature. Once inside the Domain, they resumed flying through the air, when he noticed Maya and her friends traversing the verdant fields. Light decided to help and engage them in conversation. Maya timidly produced a homemade bell, a remedy shaped as their noser, and presented it to Light as a token of gratitude for his assistance. Light joyfully accepted it, realizing he ought to offer her something in return. He covertly retrieved a magical chart and transformed it into a wristband before offering it to Maya. She gratefully retrieved the gift, pledging to cherish it indefinitely. Later that evening, as they soared through the skies, Nam questioned why Light had exchanged such a potent artifacts for a mundane, ineffective salve. God chuckled at Nam's limited understanding, asserting that the sentiment behind the gift was paramount. Furthermore, Light had bestowed upon her an enchanted bracelet capable of manifesting minor wonder if its wearer's desire was sufficiently intense. While such an artifact might hold no value for Light, for Maya, it could represent the crucial distinction between survivor and the mist. Concurrently, several days later, Light and his companions returned to the Adventurers Guild, where Nam insisted the receptionist promptly elevated Light to S rank, arguing he merited no lesser status. The receptionist, visibly anxious, informed her that such an immediate promotion was unfeasible, citing the guild as established ranking hierarchy. She reminded them that only a short while ago, they had granted Light a special dispensation, advancing him straight to the rank subsequent to his defeat of the Shadow Mantis. Nevertheless, the receptionist, called by name as Relentless Bergerin, suggested that if Light could accomplish another significant achievement, he might indeed secure a further advancement. Light found the proposition appealing and resolved to pursue a fabled adventurer hunter known for exclusively targeting humans. He shared this intention with Gold and Nam that evening, and they conjured that apprehending the adventurer hunter could indeed secure his promotion. However, they possessed no initial lead regarding the commencement of their inquiry. As they were deliberating potential strategies, Light abruptly observed an individual approaching them. He promptly donned his mask, while his companions braced themselves for engagement. Subsequently, a portal materialized before them. They anticipated an adversary to emerge. Good to their astonishment, Maya tumbled out instead. Light managed to catch her, and discovered her to be bruised and utterly fatigued. At that moment, the bracelet had previously gifted her unexpectedly fractured. Light settled Maya into bed, where she continued to mumble about her urgent need to relay all information to Light. He prioritized healing her wound, before resolving to delve into her recollections. To ascertain the circumstances leading to her current condition, he uncovered that the previous day, certain adventurers had informed Maya's group about a specific killer preying exclusively on humans. They recommended the youngsters evacuate the dungeon without delay, a suggestion the party leader endorsed. The group promptly made their way towards the exit. Yet by the time night descended, they had not even covered half the distance. Observing the pervasive exhaustion among his members, the leader pondered the safety of establishing a camp. Just as they noticed another group was faced were entirely concealed. Maya suggested to her brother that he ought to caution these individuals about the impending peril as well, and they proceeded to do so. Unbeknownst to them, they were conversing directly with the very adventurer killers, who abruptly began remarking to one another that they ought to have been more thorough concealing their track. The youngsters hadn't even grasped the implication of the statement, when the dark elf, Hyun, began to mock them, labeling them as foolish. The party leader remained bewildered by the situation, and subsequently, Kaido unsheathed his sword, announcing that we were indeed the adventure killers and that their group would serve as their ultimate quarry for the day. The children at last comprehended. They confronted their most dreadful nightmare. Yet, even amidst that terrifying realization, Maya's brother and his companions urged her to flee to safety while they confronted the bigoted assailants. They looked towards Kaido, who was incensed by the mere notion that human youngsters would dare challenge him. He instantly struck down Maya's brother first, and as the remaining two boys charged him, he dispatched them just as ruthlessly with a solitary blow. Maya was utterly petrified and heartbroken by this spectacle. However, the boys were not yet prepared to yield. They rose again, imploring her to escape and pursue her aspiration. They launched themselves at Kaido once more, and he cut them down without hesitation. Maya's only reaction was chagrin, while Yun began to admonish Kaido, reminding him that he required the humans alive for his research. Kaido retorted that an insignificant being audacious enough to oppose him would be pursued relentlessly, then informed Yun that he had, at the very least, sparred on. Yun chose to overlook his actions on this occasion. Given the scarcity of human mages, he resolved to abuse Maya, but Kaido expressed a desire to amuse himself with her beforehand. Yun instructed him to proceed as he saw fit and then departed, and Maya was utterly petrified. Kaido informed her that she ought to feel fortunate, as a burgeoning legend such as himself was prepared to make use of a squalid woman like her. Maya found herself unable to articulate a single sound, but precisely then, her brother managed to risk, urging her to escape. Yun was astonished by his sheer tenacity and conveyed this to Kaido. His strong desire to keep the boy alive for his experimental purposes. Nevertheless, Maya's brother was acutely aware that his chances of surviving the grievous wound she had sustained were non-existent, and consequently, he harbored no reservations about jeopardizing his own life to rescue his sister. He instructed Maya to flee and to live a full, long existence, and in a state of utter desperation, she complied with his directive. Yun then commanded Kaido to apprehend her, which infuriated him as he disdained receiving instructions from Aion. He resolved to eliminate the boy first, who unexpectedly began echoing gold as previous assertion. He whispered that combat was fundamentally about ingenuity and proficiency, and that he now had the opportunity to demonstrate his capabilities. Kaido merely observed him muttering, not even considering him worthy of his fortunes. When and without warning, the boy hurled his sword directly at Kaido's face, catching him completely unawares. Kaido somehow managed to evade the blow, but this was merely a diversion. Allowing the boy to prepare to strike, he shot at him, sending him sprawling to the ground. Kaido was utterly incensed at Amerihuma. Cat so thoroughly wounded his prey, and he instantly impaled the boy's chest with a spike of pure white light. He began to advance towards the boy, intending to end his life, But fortunately, Yun interceded, advising him to pursue the fleeing Gale first, lest she rise unalarmed. The enraged Kaido cursed to hit Yun as sensible concept and pursued Maya, swiftly obstructing her escape path with luminous bladder. Heichen addressed her, stating that she ought to learn proper decorum in the presence of the bearer of the Elf's Forbidden Sword. Following this, they conjured numerous blades of pure light, utilizing them as a makeshift stairway to descend to the earth. Maya resolved to resist, unwilling to squander the opportunity for which her brother and companions had forfeited their lives. She launched easy class at Kaido, who effortlessly parried them. However, he became enraged when Maya attempted to flee, and he slashed her leg, ensuring her inability to escape. He then informed her that she will now be afforded the magnificent sensitive a burgeoning hero, such as himself. Maya retorted with derision, asserting that he was merely a tormentor, while delighted in harming those less powerful than himself, and if she had ever encountered an individual truly deserving of the title hero, it was Lice. Her remark struck Kaido at his most vulnerable point, primarily because she had been labeled a bully. Throughout his existence by his fellow elf, he completely lost his composure when Maya branded him a cowardly failure, unleashing his luminous blades to end her life. Maya fervently yearned for an escape route. Her brethren, responding to her desperate desire for Lice's assistance, materialized her directly into his chamber. Having heard Maya's complete account, Lice instructs them on goal to depart without delay. Concurrently, in the dunya, Kaido Lochatesia, who is tending to Maya's brother. Maya's brother remains alive. Upon saying Kaido, Yan inquires about Maya's whereabouts, to which Kaido responded that he presumed she had teleported there to rescue her sibling. Yar, losing his composure, demands to know how a former white legend, once part of such a formidable order, could be deferred by a mere human female. Kaido, incensed, retorts that he was unaware that the girl possessed a teleportation artifact. This revelation instantly terrifies Yan, who comprehends that should Maya reach the guild and disclose all details, the Elfin nation would swiftly learn of their action, and dispatch the witness to apprehend him and reclaim the legendary sword Kaido had purloined. Kaido becomes enraged upon hearing this. Aware of the witness's immense power, particularly tier captain, who exceeds level 3,000, you furiously stamps his foot, but Yan reassures him that hope is not lost. For if Kaido successfully concludes his research, he can transcend his current level limit and eclipse the White Knights captain in strength. Kaido as spirit slave, Yan then advises him that they must locate a secure location to commence his studies. However, Lice suddenly appears, informing them that their departure is out of the question. The elves immediately identify him from their previous encounter. They are perplexed by his sudden, stealthy appearance behind them. Lice, however, disregards their presence for the moment, first ensuring the two boys are safe, before Gold presents the wounded leader to him. Gold remarks that the leader's injuries were treated inadequately. The elves are astonished to realize the boy had been spirited away right under their observation to notice. Lice swiftly mends his wound and declares that such a fate was undeserved by a third boy. He had led upright lives, merely striving to amass sufficient funds to enroll Maya in the Magic Academy. Yet, it is no beyond remedy. He laments that he may have forget a friendship had circumstances unfolded differently. He is enraged by the loss of that potential due to the elf's actions, swearing to make them pay. Yan attempts to de-escalate the tension. Yan asserts that they are not criminals and they had treated the boy after discovering him gravely wounded. However, Lice discloses that Maya had contacted him, then is now privy to all their secrets. The two elves are seized with panic, but Lice reassures them that he has not yet informed the guild. Kaido abruptly bursts into laughter upon hearing this, proclaiming it his fortunate day. For no gamer really needs to eliminate legend, and no one will ever uncover the events that transpired here. Like becomes in rugged BT statement, asserting that they will not permit the guild to apprehend them, as they are his quarry. He unleashes a palpable aura of murderous intent. He informs the elf that he intends to tear them limb from limb with his own hand. He then instructs Nim and Goltor remain uninvolved, and they comply, like advances towards the elves. Kaido, infuriated by as self-assurance, lunges forward, unleashing a full-strength sword swing. However, like Paris it with his staff without apparent effort. Kaido is stunned by his unexpected defense but persists in his assault. Like it, Manuel effortlessly deflects every blow. Yan watches in utter disbelief, while Gold and Nam privately consider Kaido a pathetic combatant. Nowo is incapable of managing his temper during combat. Like it, growing weary of Kaido as impotent fury, Paris is subsequent strike, causing him to stumble. Legend then delivers a forceful blow directly to Kaido excusely, expelling all the aim from his lunge. He taunts the elf, remarking that they had anticipated a more formidable opponent. This utterly exasperates Kaido. He receives and unleashes the full might of his fabled sword, projecting luminous blades towards light. Light effortlessly evades the initial blade, but an acid crystal materializes where it impacts the earth like istakan abek BT's phenomenon. He discovers that the magical blades Kaido is launching are imbued with various elemental properties. He begins to retreat, dodging the incoming projectiles, and comprehends that these attacks lack the potential to harm him, even if he were to remain stationary. Abruptly, Kaido materializes behind him in mid-air and delivers a full force strike. Yet, Light effortlessly parries the blow. Yan is now utterly incredulous, as no mere human should be able to contend with a level 15 elf like Kaido, but Light is distinctly outmatching him. Kaido, growing increasingly frustrated, accuses Light of being a swordsman. While the chief's others be dressing as a magen, he begins to run, labeling like a chick. Leg, however, retorts that he is indeed a mage. Kaido remains unconvinced, prompting Light to effortlessly conjure hundreds of ace words in the sky, without uttering a single incantation. Intimidated, Kaido in his desperation, dispatches more magic swords to assault Light, who meticulously deflects them, losing the easy clash he created. Yan is utterly astounded, witnessing a feat that even the most formidable elven mages cannot achieve. Concurrently, Kaido persists in his attempt to strike Light with his magical blades, but Light employs his easy clash as an impenetrable shield against every assault. Kaido begins to scream that Light must be employing some form of deception, as he cannot possibly overcome the Holy Sword Grandiose, a weapon bestowed upon an ancient maestro by the heavens themselves. Lega, astonished by this revelation, questions Kaido on his knowledge. The arrogant elf merely scoffs, stating that he is well aware that because he possesses the bloodline of a maestro, and people refer to him as a sub-maestro. Hearing this, Light instantly alters his strategy, as it has been a considerable time since he retrieved any information regarding the maestro. He informs Gold and Nail that he has revised his intentions. Rather than slaying him on the spot, he desires to take him captive and transport them back to the abyss, where he will employ every possible method to extract every last shred of information from them before their ultimate fight is decided. Kaido, still failing to grasp the extent of his disadvantage against Light, merely ridicules him, asserting that Light cannot comprehend that a sword such as his is a direct endowment from the heavens upon a hero, and from their very inception, heroes of his caliber are fundamentally unique. He begins to spout prejudiced remark, akin to a misguided advertisement, informing Light that even their genetic makeup differs, and he is inherently superior. Leg, however, pays him no mind, instead turning to Gold and Nail to instruct them that he will confront Kaido, while try to catch him and capture him alive. But Nem and Gold instantly prepare to execute his orders, drawing their armamente. Yan, nevertheless, appears self-assured, asserting that he is morally as intense, not a combat magi. Yet, if they truly believe they can subdue him effortlessly, that they are gravely mistaken. With a mere snap of his fingers, two cloaked figures behind him materialize from the shadows, transforming into monstrous, distorted forms, composed of various body parts from disparate creatures. Yeah, with palpable excitement, elaborate, that has engineered his own chimeras, amalgamations of humans, arcs, and throws to forge this beast, the sole drawback, he clarifies, is the requirement for multiple human subjects to stabilize these constructs. He elucidates that through this method, even louter being a killing of 200 yang akan lupa of 500 monster, dia cecah bertinggal of 5 or on out of the monstrosity. Then instantly identifies the individual who had spoken with him. That very morning, congratulating him on his accomplishments. This realization deeply grieves him. However, powerless to intervene, he simply instructs Gold and them to swiftly and persevering and ensure Yan does not flee. Johei, planning to handle him later, just laughs and commands his creatures to charge. However, Gold and them effortlessly dispatch the monsters with a single strike edge. John, unfazed, merely grins, asserting that his creatures aren't so readily vanquished. True to his word, the monsters immediately race once more. Prepared for a second confrontation, Kaido also initiates an assault, unleashing luminous energy blooded from his enchanted sword towards Light. Light effortlessly evades his projectile, retreating as another barrage is launched directly at him. Elsewhere in the battle, the hybrid creature assails Nem. Nem leaps backward, striking at its limbs and imploring it to yield without a struggle, while Gold gestures, questioning her customary self-assurance. She retorts sharply that he, though appears somewhat unlike himself, would Gold simply chuckles, stating he is merely getting started. The other creature then targets Gold. Gold confronts the assault directly, yet the monster deftly evades at the final second and retaliates, an attack Gold successfully parries with his shield. Despite blocking, he is forced backward. John chuckles wildly, urging them to capitulate, and assures them he will be merciful if they comply. As John proceeds with his experiment, Nem finds the Dark Elf unsettling and inquires of Gold if they can conclude the skirmish promptly, wishing to avoid prolonging it. Gold concurs, prompting them to unleash their most potent technique wave. Nem as daggers begin to emit an unsettling purple luminescence, while Gold as sword radiates a brilliant white light. Even as they prepare to launch their assault, John remains entirely composed, asserting that his hybrid creations possess astonishing regenerative capability and cannot be dispatched so readily. However, his mirth quickly turns to a chocolate gas as he observes that these monsters are not regenerative. Instead, they are being incinerated into acid. Following their devastating streak, he is in disbelief and rushes to investigate, but 10 AM swiftly incapacitates him, ensuring his lineage will chase with him. Meanwhile, on the other flank, Light employs his Kyomanchi to utterly overpower Kaido, who staggered and collapses. Light then advances towards him. Light questions why he is retreating after instigating the conflict. This provocation brings to Kaido as man, Maya as brother, who wants there to challenge him. The memory of being punched in the face reignites all his animosity, leading him to declare that humans are beneath him and object to be purged from the entire planet. He rises once more and unleashes the authentic might of the fabled sword, grandiose, which elongates skyward, compelling Light to withdraw. As Kaido brandishes it towards him, Light discerns that the blade has been imbued with various magical properties, causing it to behave more like a flexible wind than a rigid sword. Observing its serpentine movements, Ne and Gold remarked from afar, "Hat, it is indeed an intriguing technique, especially for a low-ranking commoner. Nevertheless, he acknowledged that its power pales in comparison to Light Air's. Kaido, conversely, grows increasingly exasperated, shouting at Light to chase his cowardly behavior. He demonstrates standstill, asserting that a single strike from his sublet weapon would spell the end of Light's entire lineage. Light merely chuckles, stating that Kaido is vastly overestimating his own capabilities. Light then descends to the ground, arms extended, openly challenging Kaido to strike him. Infuriated by his defiance, Kaido unleashes his full measure, swinging the sword at him. The blow lands squarely on Light's shoulder with immense force, yet to Kaido's astonishment, Light remains standing, completely unblemished and smiling. Light then inquires if that was the extent of Kaido's power. This question short-circuits Kaido's mind, causing him to flail his sword erratically at Light, unable to comprehend, being outmatched. Despite possessing the legendary sword, Light swiftly concludes the charade by dismantling the enchantment on the blade. He then delivers an uppercut to Kaido's face, sending him sprawling back to the ground, his face now bloodied. Light stands over him, his eyes filled with disdain, as he asserts that he intends to extract every possible piece of information from him using any method available, and will persist until Kaido himself yearns for the sweet oblivion of death. Kaido instantly comprehends his predicament, and his aggressive demeanor shifted as he prostrates himself before Light, pleading for clemency and revealing his origin from the Elven Kingdom. He further states who was once destined to become the captain of the Four-Blood White Knights. Light gazes down at him with contempt, questioning his audacity to label himself a hero. Light points out that three heroes are Maya's companion, who sacrificed their lives but battled until their last breath. With that, Light removes his mask. He then informs Kaido that if by chance even inflict a minor scratch on him during a fight, Light will release him. Kaido, however, rejects this offer and flees. Kaido is in disbelief at his situation, but Light intends to inflict the same torment upon him as Kaido did to Mayhem. Therefore, the Light employs his solar ray to sever one of Kaido's legs, sending him to the ground in agony. With Kaido and the other elf now restrained, Light threatens the fallen members of Maya's group. He states that burying them within the monster-infested dungeon is impossible, so they instead utilize teleportation magic to transport everyone to the abyss. When the elves regain consciousness, they find themselves in a vast throne room, utterly bewildered. Legend, however, informs them that they have arrived at the deepest level of the dungeon, known as Dogus, and this is their dwelling place. John expresses disbelief that Aion could reside at the lowest point of the world as most perilous dungeon but and impromptu silences him with a swift kick. Light as four loyal retainers instantly appear, greeting him warmly while inquiring about the identity of the two elves. Light then clarifies the circumstances. He reveals that this despicable individual had been exploiting humans for their cruel experiments, leading to the senseless deaths of numerous people. The instant he utters this word, the ambience shifts dramatically, and a shiver runs down the elf's penis as they perceive how utterly outmatched they are, solely from the menacing aura radiating from the four women. Before them, one of them asks Light if he desires for the elves to endure the most excruciating pain conceivable, to which the others conjure. He offers him various suggestions for dispatching the elves, but Light instructs them that the captives must remain alive until he has extracted all necessary information from them, and only then will he personally execute them. All agree, and Light turns to Gold and Nym, instructing them to ensure Maya's brother fully recovers. He also tasks them with creating a burial place for the two courageous friends who sacrificed their lives to safeguard Maya. When Maya eventually awakens, she discovers Light seated beside her at the inn. Appearing disoriented and bewildered by recent events, Light recounts all that has transpired, fabricating a story that he discovered her unconscious within the dungeons. They claim Heichen brought her to safety. Suddenly, her memories flood back. She swiftly scans the room for her friends and brother, but only locates her brother. He is peacefully asleep on the adjacent bed. Lake informs her that he is in a profound healing slumber due to severe injuries, but assures her he will make a full recovery without any lasting complication. The atmosphere, however, darkens when he eventually reveals that he was unable to rescue her friends, and the soul items she managed to retrieve were a few strands of hair, which represents to her. She weeps openly for her deceased companions but finds comfort in the knowledge that her brother remained capable of sharing her grief. The following morning, Late and his group proceed to the reception area. The receptionist promotes likes to Chiran, which confuses him since he had previously led to the duel, stating the elves had escaped rather than being captured. However, the receptionist clarifies that the intelligence gathered regarding the two elves was significant enough on its own to warrant the advancement. Shortly thereafter, Light reconnects with Mai and her brother, who appear remarkably composed given their friends' recent demise in a brutal assault. They inform Mike that they are abandoning their adventuring career and heading back to their native village. Like, perplexed, inquires further. He suggests they should simply assemble a new group, but Maya asserts she is suffering from PTSD and must depart. Her brother then explains that would be inappropriate to join another party without their lifelong companion. Furthermore, they wish to transport their friends' possessions back to their hometown. And families, with that, Light wishes them well, vowing they will cross paths again in the near future. He instructs Gold and them to maintain their position as he teleports back to the Abbey. Upon arrival, Mai and Ali promptly welcome him with them and a collection of notes. These notes contain all the information they extracted from the two elves. Ali clarifies that Semistro is an individual, but rather a non associated with the Maestro. Who possesses the ability to level up with exceptional as is referred to as a sub-maestro. Mai then informs him that every individual within the Wild Knight factions are sub-maestros themselves, and Kaido was not unique in this aspect. She further discloses that the elves ascertain the entire world will face destruction if a new maestro remained undiscovered. This revelation perplexes Legend, who struggles to comprehend how something seemingly so trivial could lead to global annihilation. Consequently, their immediate objective is to apprehend the white needs for interrogation. He then inquires with Ali about the status of Kaido and Joy. She promptly reveals they are trapped in a purgatorial dimension, enduring relentless torture day and night. Light declares that they have fulfilled their utility. He then employs a unique spell card to dispatch them in the most gruesome manner imaginable, before turning his attention to Ellie. He inquires if they are prepared to execute the subsequent phase of their strategy. Ellie grins, affirming her readiness to seize the White Knights, Sasha. Cecil, the elf who betrayed Light many years prior, Light suffers the thought of Sasha pleading for her life and prepares to set their shame in motion. However, this marks the conclusion of the video. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next installment.